Welcome back to Enlighten Up for episode 37, Alternative Health versus Big Pharma, Money Talks, and the Intuitive Body. You've got all four of us today having a very friendly conversation about health and its relation to spirituality. We're going to talk about the difference between Eastern and Western philosophies. Does the government truly have our health interests at heart? And what about conspiracies? Is there a bigger reason to them? And what about money when it comes to the mainstream media? Should we truly be listening to them, or do they have something valuable to tell us? Later on in the episode, we're going to talk about value systems, integrity, and our body intuitive alignment. Does our body have an intuition that can help us discern our health before it gets too late? And of course, before we end things off, we're going to talk about food and the vibration of our body and how foods and certain diet changes can raise our vibrations. We look forward to sharing all this information with you today, so let's jump right into the episode and hear what all four of us had to say. Welcome back to Enlighten Up, everyone. I am here with Lisa, Michael, and Brian, and you have just the lovely four of us today. We're going to talk a little bit about the alternative health industry and why some of us started to take a different path from westernized medicine and started to explore the aspects of Eastern medicine and why we did that and what some of the results have been. Have they been positive? Have they been negative? We're going to talk about it. And we're going to talk about how health relates to spirituality and why it becomes such a topic of interest when we start to awaken our minds and our souls and start to take deeper looks into ourselves. So, how are you three doing today?
Great.
I'm doing great.
Fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Michael,
Yeah.
since you're always so chipper, let's let you start the show off today. How do you feel? Let's bring it back to when you were younger. What was your perspective on health and wellness and medicine versus how you have a perspective of it today? Like, has it been the same or has it changed?
No, it's changed completely. And I have many theories. Not theories. I feel like we were duped when we were young. And Nicole, you and I are the same age. So like you might have remembered, and actually most of us probably are within the age range where they talked a lot about that pyramid, the food pyramid.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And how ridiculously wrong that is now. I'm looking at it as like, I almost feel like I want to sue somebody on how bad that was.
What about it do you hate the most? Like, what about it angers you?
The fact that, it really wants you to be loaded with breads and those type of sugars that really the FDA wouldn't even approve nowadays. If sugar just all of a sudden came on the market, the FDA wouldn't approve it. And it's like we were kind of duped when we were young, thinking, oh yeah, if I eat this wheat bread, I'll be healthy. If I stay away from eggs and things like that, I will stay healthy. And it's like, it's just completely wrong from what I've been
When
learning.
we were kids, it was even worse. It was white bread. I don't ever remember wheat bread being on my table.
Wonder bread.
Wonder bread.
Yeah. And it's just like, there's just so much that it's particularly in the last 2-3 years and that I've learned that I just feel like we just kind of got duped when we were young by the government in some ways, kind of dictating what is healthy and what is not. I should have.
This sounds like a government conspiracy.
I really feel like the government. I'm actually just going to say it. I believe the government wants us to die at age 80, if not before.
Well, it saves them a lot of money.
Exactly. Their main goal is to get us off of the Social Security, and all that dependable care. And so why would they be looking out for our best health interest?
That makes sense to me.
Same way when it comes to the pharmaceutical companies, and the same thing when it comes to hospital care and insurance and things like that. It's just this is one of those topics where I could definitely get into more conspiracy type waters.
Well, okay, I think 80 is being very generous.
I agree.
72.
I think 66 the year after you retire.
Yeah, exactly. As soon as you're no longer contributing to society, get out of here.
Exactly. But it's we joke about it, but I'm dead serious. I think there's an internal ploy or external whatever to really get it, like Nikki said, get us off the table.
So
I would agree. I mean, I certainly don't think that they're putting information out there that is truly beneficial to our health. I mean, from the, American Heart Association to the,
Oh, that's another joke.
I mean, it's ridiculous what they're telling us. And the cholesterol level, we've talked about that a little bit, about the number.
Yeah.
I used to take a statin until I met a friend of Lisa's, and we were just at a dinner party, and he was talking about how he cornered his doctor about the cholesterol number, and he was just kept drilling his doctor, who was a good friend of his, and the guy was probably more honest than he would have been if it was not a good friend of his, and just kept saying, well, where does that number come from? And he said, oh, the drug company that makes the statin, that makes the the cholesterol medication, they come up with the threshold, and that makes sense why they keep changing the number, because
Exactly.
they need to change the number to
Make more
keep
money.
selling the
to
damn
make more
drug.
money. That day, I stopped taking the statin. I've never taken it again.
I've heard nothing, absolutely nothing good about that drug. That is just, I feel like, and we're worried about marijuana and stuff like that in this country is ridiculous.
Well, I will say this, from the clients of mine that I know who are on statin, they have aged significantly since going on it. And if you read the results of statins, they say that like the aging of your body is enhanced through taking statins.
Interesting.
My mother sent me a text recently and said she was all upset because she just went to the doctor today, and she's 80, and that she has to now be on statins because her cholesterol level went up. I immediately said, no, you don't. I mean,
Ridiculous.
and I've researched just even garlic. They say that fresh crushed garlic on a daily basis and apple cider vinegar will lower your cholesterol level.
Well, first of all, when we
You
talk
don't
about the
necessarily
heart,
even have to lower your cholesterol.
yeah, the heart,
Right.
and what is it? The Heart Disease Foundation, whatever it is. Anything.
American
The reason
Heart
why we're
Association.
talking about heart cholesterol is because we're worried about heart attacks, right? Well, the reality is that heart attacks aren't caused by high cholesterol. In fact, cholesterol has
Exactly.
nothing to do with heart attacks. It's the inflammation that is the precursor for all of it. And the cholesterol was like the scapegoat. It was like the fall guy
Right.
that they just chose. They were like, oh, let's just use cholesterol. And so the whole thing about even worrying about your cholesterol, like I don't even know why it's a major issue, to be quite honest. If people started tackling inflammation in their bodies,
Nikki, I have a theory on that. I really think it's a lot of the food industry has an impact on what they want to sell. They wanted
I
to
want to make money.
they wanted to pump out certain products and scaring people from eating eggs and instead of eating something else is like one of the tactics of doing it.
yeah, it's like once you start, and this is the whole thing, like we talked about. Lisa and Brian and I had a very intense conversation last night over some wine and dinner, and it was about how it's our duty to ourselves to understand and discern what is actually educational and truly beneficial to us, like the knowledge that we're taking in. Is just because it's coming from an authority, does that mean it's actually good for me? Or should I be questioning it and doing my own research to validate what I'm being told?
Absolutely. And, the bottom line is that you can't trust, mainstream media, and you can't trust the doctors that are owned by the pharmaceutical companies, that you have to do your own
Well,
own
you just have to
research.
verify. You can, you can still trust your doctor, but verify and not look at them. And this is what happens a lot in my industry. Doctors get this godly feeling over their patients, so from the patient's perspective, so the patient just believes anything that comes out of the doctor's mouth. You can trust them, but verify the heck out of what they're saying.
Trust but
You know,
verify.
that makes me think about when I chose my first doctor. I have an interesting relationship with the health field because my mom is a nurse. So she was always my doctor, and still today, if I have a medical issue, I call her first. She's so smart, but she's also unhealthy in a lot of her habits as well, because she fits within what the system tells her. But when I graduated from college and moved out here to Colorado, and signed up for the employer health program, and I had to go through and pick my own doctor. I remember looking through the list, and I was like, how do you pick a doctor? And I set up a couple of appointments with different doctors, and there was this one guy in his description. He talked about he was a blending between Eastern and Western medicine. And to this day, I have no idea why I felt like I was drawn towards quote unquote Eastern medicine. But his approach was so unique. And when I met with him, he told me what his approach was. He said, I will tell you all the different ways we can treat anything that you have. I can give you a pill. I can give you the Western medicine pill, or you can do psychotherapy or bee sting therapy, or the whole gamut. I will tell you every treatment that is available for your ailment, and you choose.
That's amazing.
It was such an incredible feeling that ultimately it was my choice, and I would assume 9 out of 10 doctors aren't that way. And you go and you see your doctor, and the doctor says, this is what I want you to do.
99 out of 100 doctors aren't that way.
Yeah, no, I agree with Lisa. And that's a pretty incredible experience that you were able to come across, that you were able to find a doctor that empowers you to choose what you feel is right for your body, given all the options that the doctors presented you are viable.
Let me put an asterisk next to that statement. Keep in mind, when I graduated college, I moved to Boulder.
Oh.
Yeah, see, this is not just anywhere in America. I was in Boulder, and his office was next to the Naropa Institute. So.
Yeah, that makes more sense. And it's funny for me. I think about why or how I got on more of a natural path of medicine, and honestly, it probably started with my mother. I'm the youngest of 8, and she didn't have money to send us to the doctor, so a lot of the time it was just like you just kind of had to figure it out. Like the doctor
Put some dirt on it.
Yeah, rub some dirt on it. That was kind of the last resort. So it did make you sort of think outside of the doctor's office, like, what can I do to heal myself, or what are my other options? So I think that it kind of started there. But I remember when I was pregnant, I had a doctor. I just asked somebody for a recommendation. Here's an OBGYN. I'm new to Colorado. I sign up with this doctor, but I started doing some just reading baby books, pregnancy books about all these different methods of things that could be done, whether you have an IV or an episiotomy or you don't have one, and learning more about that. And when I was 6 months pregnant, I went into my doctor's office, and I was kind of excited because I'd been researching pregnancy, and I said, oh yeah, I decided, I don't want an episiotomy, and I definitely don't want to have an IV. And I guess I had heard a story about women in the rice paddy fields who squatted, had their baby, and threw them in the backpack and kept working. And that story really stuck in my head. And I was thinking, people have been having babies for, trillions of years, right? Or however long.
Maybe
babies,
not that many.
However long, you never know. Babies are being made, and millions of years.
Yeah, we'll go with millions.
And we didn't have doctors back then, and we didn't have all these things. So I was thinking, I don't need all this stuff. And so when I told him, he said to me, I'm your doctor, and I will do what I see fit.
Oh.
And I literally jumped up off the table, and I just started getting dressed, right there in front of him. And I said, yeah, you're not my doctor anymore. And I left.
Good for you.
Found myself a midwife. But it was a great experience, because that alone just kind of made me question going forward, with my children and everything a doctor said to me. I'm like, if a doctor can be that arrogant, over just delivering a baby, which to me is not an illness, it's a natural thing. I'm not sick here. I don't need your knives and your pills and your potions and whatever it is, your pharmaceuticals. What are they going to suggest to me when I bring my children in? So I questioned everything after that.
That's a really good point. And I think that's like something that we forget because we're so immersed in what our society is now, that we forget about the millions of years before us. Like, what did people do without all of these drugs? And we think that, people like only lived to being 20 years old, and now we've been able to extend life to, if you're really lucky, 80 years old.
I think that's a really good point, because there are some benefits to what we've discovered with Western medicine.
There are. Go ahead and name them.
You just did. We've extended our life. I'm not saying with all of Western medicine, but when I say Western medicine, maybe I should just say medicine in general. We've learned things that we do now that we didn't do 200 years ago. Just
Antibiotics probably is a really big one, that maybe people died, of an early death because of infections and things like that.
A lot of people died from consumption, and
the birth mortality rate back in the day, before really a lot of the hospitals, was about 50%. I mean,
yeah.
Okay, but then I can argue that if you go into less civilized societies where the community is very much in alignment with nature, so thinking of like different tribes, whether it's in South America, here in North America, where they're very in tune with Mother Nature and what Mother Nature has to offer, that, you think about the societies in, say, South America that have never used toothpaste once in their life, and they have extremely healthy gums and teeth, but it's because they don't eat sugar. So while we're advancing our medicine, we're deteriorating everything else because of it. And so it's almost like, well, what do we really need? Do we really need all of these pharmaceuticals? Or what if we just went back to basics and started eating the way Mother Nature intended us to, like for our bodies? Because I do believe that our bodies were designed to handle many things, and that in nature, all of the cures are available to us. It just doesn't make sense why you would be put here and then not have the cures. It's just a matter of using your alignment with nature, your tuneness, your intuitiveness, and your understanding of knowledge through passage down through elders and whatever, to understand what it is works.
I think that's an incredible point. A natural choice. I mean, the pharmaceuticals I think are way off base. I actually, when I moved back to America from China a year ago, it was a year ago this week actually, I came back to start a hemp company. It was a wellness company, and all the products were made from hemp. And I discovered the endocannabinoid system in our bodies, which is an incredible aspect that our body has to fight illnesses and ailments. But it works with a certain plant. It doesn't work with any pharmaceutical, but it works with a plant that has been made illegal. Or it works with a part of the plant. The cannabis plant, specifically the hemp plant, and the CBD, the cannabinoid molecules in that plant. It's the only thing that docks with the endocannabinoid system in our body. And here's this thing that has been taken away from everyone.
Made illegal.
And it's something that we have not been able to ingest, which means that part of our body has just been laying dormant.
I mean, that just goes right back to Michael's point about, he thinks that there's, I'm going to call it a conspiracy, in the government to actually, they don't want us to live forever.
Well, from what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I understand that the whole reason why hemp was demonized was because they were starting to realize that they could use it to fuel cars, and the oil industry didn't want that to come out. And obviously the government makes a lot of money through oil. And so to me, that was one of the biggest reasons why hemp got demonized.
It's one. It'll be one of those things that'll always be a urban legend. We don't know the real reason. I think the more likely culprit, and it might sound surprising because now we're more familiar with big oil, but you've got to think this is the early part of the 20th century. Oil wasn't as big, but you know what industry was?
Cotton.
Big cotton was probably the bigger culprit, because the industrial version of the hemp plant, which is the one that grows 12 to 15 feet tall, which was used for rope cordage and clothing and all those sorts of things, it was a big competitor to cotton. And the hemp plant is really interesting. It's one of the few plants that can be farmed that actually adds nutrients back to the soil. So many of our plants that we farm destroy the soil, and that's why they had to invent crop rotation, because you had to let a part of your field stay fallow for a while. But hemp just feeds the soil. It's carbon neutral. It's really this really incredible plant. But who knows why it was really, it was more than likely
Oil or cotton.
Somebody was against it. But it's like so many things that have happened in our society. When one industry that makes a lot of money is challenged by a startup, the little guy, they squash it.
I think that's really the thing that needs to be understood, like as you're awakening, and it's just the idea that government and big companies, they're not looking out for your best interest. They're looking out for theirs.
Their bottom line.
They're looking out for their bottom line, and they will come, they won't stop at anything to achieve that bottom line, even
if it kills people or makes people sick.
Exactly.
Tobacco.
And they'll use lobbyists and politicians and anything that they can to change laws, like making, hemp and CBD illegal, just to save their bottom line. And, I think still, I know a lot of people are waking up to it, but there's still a lot of people who out there who just don't want to believe that the government and the powers that be and the people that own these conglomerate companies wouldn't care about the health and well-being of, billions of people. And it's a hard pill to swallow, but it's just true. And I think, a lot of people just label that as a conspiracy theory, and then that gives it a bad taste in your mouth, and you don't want to believe that. But it's just true. There's just
I'll tell you a story. It's somewhat related. My first profession after I graduated college, I was a historic preservationist, and I traveled around the country working in historic communities and historic neighborhoods all around. And what was really fascinating to me, one of the things that I learned through doing this, most mid-size communities, small and mid-sized communities all across the country, they had little trolley systems that would run from the first ring neighborhood into the downtown, and they were really quite popular. But then all of a sudden they all went away, all around the same time period, and it was because one company bought all of the rail lines in America
and shut them down. And it was Goodyear, because they made tires and they wanted people to drive. So just imagine how different all of our lives would be if all of these wonderful communities still had these little trolley systems that would take people back and forth. And, now we have highways and cars everywhere.
Yeah, no,
right on point.
Yeah, that's an interesting point to make. And I will say this is my personal opinion, but I feel like the term conspiracy theory is used by those who are lazy and don't want to open their minds to search for the truth themselves. And
that was aimed at Brian.
No, not because of our conversation last night, but because of anyone who uses the word conspiracy when they're confronted with something they can't believe to be true. It's one thing to not believe that it's true. You're allowed to believe whatever you want. But if you're not willing to at least do your own due diligence to research it without just labeling it as a conspiracy theory because you just don't feel like believing it, to me, that's laziness.
I want to tell you something that just happened to Lisa and I that's going to make you laugh, Nicole. We were just over at my parents' house, and we went for a walk with my dad. Lisa and I and my dad were walking, smoking cigars, and he's behind us, and we're just walking, and there's a plane flying overhead, and I just made a flippant comment about it was a contrail. It was very clearly a condensation trail. And my dad said, "Oh, did you know there's a new conspiracy theory about how that's actually chemicals?" And he said, "I was just watching 9 News and they proved that there was no data to support that." And Lisa just let him know how the news agencies are a part of the cover-up.
I was like, I'll agree with you that that's a contrail. That is not a chemtrail.
Oh,
However,
goodness. We don't want to get started on this one.
Chemtrails do exist, and of course 9 News is going to I go, mainstream media, of course they're going to, he goes, 9 News isn't mainstream media.
Any media that has commercials, you cannot trust.
Oh, that's a really interesting point.
Cha-ching!
Wow, that made sense to me.
Oh, dear Lord, something made sense.
But it's a really good point.
There's a case, I think it was ESPN, that actually had to pull an article or change the article completely because a football player from the Patriots did so much better this year because he said he changed his diet, and the one thing he changed his diet was stop going to Wendy's. And they couldn't report that because guess who was one of their sponsors?
Wendy's. Interesting.
And so it's like, and then this last week with all the gun situation, we keep focusing on guns, but nobody's talking about the pharmaceutical drugs that most of these people were on. Guess who is a big investor in a lot of commercials on all the major news networks in between? You know, you see
all you see
left
is
and right.
drug commercials.
Exactly. So yeah, of course they're going to avoid that part of the.
So they're not reporting on, the most important aspect of the story because
they want to report on, and they will.
Yeah. It's just you cannot get your information from you nailed it from any.
I've never heard it talked about that way, and it's a really mind-opening point to me that they are there to make money, which is why they're selling airtime. Mm-hmm. And somebody's going to say, "Well, I'm not going to give you money if you say this." Now, that would also presuppose that your advertisers know what your content is before you air it.
Well, I'm sure there's some sort of contracts that they're held under to say that these are the things that you...
Yeah, these are the topics.
You can't say anything anti these subjects or these companies or... so that's when we did
a lot of
talk
times,
extensively...
also... sorry, Lisa, but
no, go
a lot
ahead.
of times they'll go back and retract an article or change it completely after a sponsor, calls the network and says, whoa. That happens a lot. And that's what happened in this recent thing with the Wendy's thing that I was telling you about.
But this ties in exactly to what we were talking about last night. And the point that we were trying to make, was that these major networks are funded solely by advertisers, and so they're so dependent on their delivery of information that they're going to call news to you is so dependent on who is paying them to be there. Whereas you now have these major networks being completely threatened by independent content creators who are delivering news from their perspective with no one telling them how to censor their information, what sort of funnels they need to put their information through. And you have networks like CNN being very threatened now because their audience is starting to move towards that. They're losing their audience at a very rapid rate.
You can almost sense the desperation with CNN too, because they're getting so ridiculous with their coverage just to try to keep any kind of entertainment value to them.
That makes me think of something that you're getting ready to, I think, go through, Nicole. You know, with your growing online presence, your social media presence, and your online presence, you're being approached by people that want you to mention their products. Isn't that true?
Yeah, I am.
Okay. So how do you go about that?
If I don't feel like the product would serve my audience to their highest good, I will never do it.
Yeah, but even if it does serve their highest good and you accept their money, but then you're in one of your podcasts or videos or whatever it is where they're advertising, and you mention also one of their competitors, they're going to call and they're going to say, hey, you can't do that. You gotta rein it in, or, you know, we're going to pull our funding.
That's why, like, I'm actually, you know, it's an interesting topic because I'm now having to address that. And I will never compromise my integrity, like, because I never, to me, my biggest, one of the things that is so important to me is that I build a relationship of trust with my audience. And I want them to know and always understand that whatever information I'm going to give, that I truly stand behind it, I believe it, and I'm delivering it because I believe it's helpful. If at any time I think something outside of that is going to compromise it and it's got to do with money in some sort of way, I won't be a part of it.
You know, while I absolutely, you know, believe and trust you in what you just said, it just makes me wonder how many people, I mean, you know, this is one of those famous last words, how many broadcasters and news people have said that exact same thing. I will never compromise my integrity. And
then get
I just touched somebody's breast and I got fired. You know, I bet you could find at some point in the last 20 years,
for sure,
quote from Matt Lauer that said, I will never compromise my integrity.
Yeah, it's a cliche statement, but since we know Nicole, I'm giving her the benefit of the doubt.
And that's why I said that. I 100% believe Nicole would never do that. But it just makes you wonder. I mean, you know, I'm at the beginning of starting a new company, and I know I would never compromise my integrity. But in 20 years, when you're a multi-million-dollar corporation, how things change.
Okay, well, this is good.
And how the devil tempts you.
This
is
good, and this is why my spiritual practice is so important to me, to keep me grounded, to keep me out of ego as often as possible, to always be in alignment with serving myself and everyone else around me to the highest good. And at some point, you know, I believe that, you know, everyone has a price. You know, that doesn't mean that that price will ever be met. Perhaps that price doesn't even have a dollar value. But there's, to me, you can't, as soon as you take one step off the path of integrity, you're ruined. You're ruined. Yep. And I just, to me, I'm not doing this for the money anyway. So that's where, like, for me, yeah, of course I need to make a living. I need to you know, pay my bills and have enough to make a life for myself that I'm comfortable and can support a family on. But I don't have the personality of, the dollar is not to me as valuable as many other things in my life.
Oh, so it's the ego.
Yeah, it's the ego. But also, like, to me, like, I will always, my time is more valuable than money. And so if something's going to compromise my time, like it's going to get in the way of how much time I can spend with a loved one, or it's going to get in the way of my time that I need to keep myself healthy, like, I won't compromise that. To me, that is of much more value than a dollar. So it's a matter of figuring out what your value system is. And when you know what your value system is, and if it aligns in with your integrity, then you know where you're supposed to go and where you're not supposed to go.
You know, and I think, I just keep thinking about the, you know, topic that we kind of started with about health and wellness and pharmaceuticals and you know, doctors that got into medicine, that maybe got into it because they truly wanted to help people. And
well, and they all say an oath that starts "do no harm."
yeah, and then, but they're, also being bought, just like, we talk about advertising on television for the news broadcast. It's the same thing with doctors and pharmaceutical companies that are coming to them and paying them to, use our product, give our product. This is,
So are they breaking that oath? Do no harm if they are giving drugs that are not good for people?
Maybe they don't necessarily believe that they're harmful.
I think, from the doctors I've met, they have some of the biggest egos in the world. So if they feel like it's something that is correct and true with whatever BS that they were fed by whoever was selling them on it, then they're just going to run with it. And they may not, like Lisa said, they may not know that they are causing harm out there. They may not know by putting you on a statin that you're rapidly aging your body.
But when they go to medical school, it's medicine. It's, when you go to a doctor, think about what their degree is
They're
in.
studying medicine.
Their degree is in medicine. You're not going to a holistic health naturopath. You're going to somebody whose job is to prescribe medicine to make you better. So yeah, they're upholding their oath, because I think the whole entire time that they went to school and their internship and all that, that's what they learned. That's how they learned to heal these, ailments and diseases and symptoms, is through medicine. So they don't think that they're doing anything wrong.
Unless you're the like my doctor in Boulder. His part of his story was, he went to medical school here in America, but when he had to do his internship or whatever it is, he went to Vietnam.
And then so I think, as an individual, like we said in the beginning, it's our responsibility to make sure that we're doing the correct thing for ourselves, to do the research and not necessarily just take, a doctor's advice or whatever. But maybe that pill or whatever is your best choice. Maybe you really do need to be on an antibiotic, but maybe you need to get a second or third opinion, but maybe not from a medical doctor.
I completely agree. I do believe that medicine has its place. I really do believe that it has
Absolutely.
its place. My mother would not be here today if it wasn't for a surgeon who knew how to take out a tumor the size of a grapefruit from her brain. My mother would not be here today. And that actually was something that shifted me out of being so far extreme to the natural health side and Eastern philosophy of medicine to coming back and realizing, okay, no, there is a time and a place for this. It's just a matter of knowing when. And are we being proactive in creating a healthy lifestyle for ourselves so that we're not constantly succumbing to these drugs, because we are constantly getting sick, or, whatever it is that our body's breaking down, whether it's through inflammation, that we are constantly getting sick and have to be, looking towards drugs as an option. Like, are we not being proactive and taking care of our vessel first and foremost and doing everything that we possibly know we can so that we're not always facing that situation? And then when you do face that situation, it's a lot, more seldom, and then you don't feel as,
helpless.
Yeah, exactly, as helpless.
It makes me think of my sister-in-law, who's a double doctor. She's a research physician, scientist, oncologist, and I approached her about hemp one time because it can have incredible results with cancer. It can actually kill cancer. CBD can. And she looked at me and she said, when it's legal, I'd love to study it. And she can't. It's just fascinating that even from a physician's point of view, it's not even on the table.
Look at what has been achieved by just passing that law. It's just stymied the medical profession.
But look at how it's also either on purpose or a good side effect for the pharmaceutical companies. Now we have more cancer. because we don't
It's
have
a business.
we can't use this one thing. Well, now I can make more money because I gotta come up with a fake way to fight cancer.
I just think that that's just an important thing that people allow themselves to contemplate. For the four of us, we're already there, but and probably for most of our listeners are probably already there, but just understanding that it's a money-driven business for people to be ill. Sick people is such a big money maker, and you have to open your mind to the fact that as sick as it is, as sad as it is, that people that you think should be looking out after your best interests really want you to stay sick so that they can continue to make money. It's a true thing. It's a fact. And you have to open your eyes to it, and you have to be aware of it. You don't have to necessarily be afraid of it, but at least be aware that that's something that's going on.
But, they're also, like Michael pointed out, they are terribly egotistical and driven by that ego. And they're always going to tell you they're right. They're not going to say, yeah, you don't have any hope. They're going to say, here, take the magic pill.
Mm-hmm.
Well, a lot rides.
To be fair, though, I mean, I'm way overgeneralizing too. I mean, I've met some good doctors out there.
Of course,
people think
absolutely.
And I told a story about a wonderful doctor.
Yeah. So sometimes I feel like I'm, I don't want to like throw everybody
You
under
can't
the
throw
bus.
the baby out with the bathwater. I mean, there are good. We've talked about this in everything that we talk about, whether it's psychics or doctors or, anything. There's good and bad.
Right.
There's people who really do look out for your best interest.
And
I'll tell you what, though, I believe generally speaking, the insurance is not looking out for our best interest at all.
Yeah, we haven't even talked about that.
Oh, geez.
Well,
You
no,
just said scam. Is that
Insurance is such a scam. It pisses me off so bad, especially with hearing all the stories of the post-hurricane stuff that happened down here and how these insurance companies are just screwing people so bad.
Nicole's trying to figure out why I'm such a different person on air than I am with her in person.
What do you mean? Why?
You just said scam.
Because I just said scam, and it's like, oh yeah, I agree with that. And,
We already talked about this.
I pushed you so hard on your opinions.
I know, but that's only because you get triggered by conspiracy. So
I do. It's a trigger.
We figured that out last night.
I think that's a really interesting idea to see if we discover something. When
All four of us are discovering each other's triggers.
Just the fact that you have you now understand, or you said it, you can see that the word conspiracy is a trigger for you. That's huge. Because once you start to discover what your buttons are and that you're automatically reacting something, then you can just say, hey, is this real? Like, do I need to act this way? Or why am I letting myself be triggered? So that's a big first step.
Brian,
maybe
in
all of my past lives, I've been killed by a conspiracy.
It's very possible. It's very possible that you could have been a conspiracy theorist in a past life and have been murdered several times for speaking out about it. And so now, as a fail-safe to keep you protected here in this lifetime, you just won't talk about it.
I shut it down.
Yeah. It's a very real possibility. But I just, do you know,
real
Brian?
With quotes around it. Real with air quotes around it.
Do you know, Brian, where conspiracy originated from?
The word? No.
You should look it up.
Oh, come on. You can't just go there. You got to tell us.
No,
listeners are going to say, I don't want to go to the dictionary.
You should look into why conspiracy was created.
Why the word conspiracy?
Yeah, it was to shut the people up who were telling the truth.
The etymology of the word conspiracy.
Yeah, and how it was used to further specific agendas.
Well, yeah, because if somebody wants to speak the truth and say, hey, look at what these people are doing, they don't have our best interests. They're making people sick, blah, 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 whatever the case may be. The easiest way to shut those people up is to say, conspiracy theorists.
Yeah, but there's an actual movement behind the whole word. Like there was a an entire agenda behind it. So look into it.
Okay.
It's not just a definition that she's looking for.
Yeah, it's not just a definition. And I'm asking you to look into it because I feel like it would be better for you to research it than me to tell you what it is.
Because I won't believe you. Because I'll think it's a conspiracy. I'll look it up.
Okay, cool. So I wanted to talk about, how spirituality plays into this because, we talk about energy a lot and we talk about tuning into what you're feeling, like bringing mind and body into union so that you can listen to what your body's trying to tell you, and the mind, and how they can work together to communicate to you what might be going on, and how that actually is a major tool for all of us to use when we're trying to discern our own health. Like, for instance, Lisa, you have been doing this with your back.
Yes. I've tried everything.
No, but I mean, we were talking about it just this morning, how your Pilates is forcing you to really tune into what your body is capable of, where the pain is, what you're feeling, and you're able to discern like what has healed, where the root of the problem might be, like just where it is in your actual body.
Yeah, I think, my whole life, I have been the healthiest person I've ever known. I don't get sick hardly ever. I can go. I've been a runner for a long time. Love to go to the gym. Just, I can do so many things, and nothing's ever stopped me. I heal really quickly, all that. So when my back first started to hurt, I really didn't listen to myself. I just had this notion that I was sort of invincible, and I have a very high tolerance for pain. So I'm not someone who ever really let pain stop me. I just kind of pushed through things. And to a certain degree, I knew when I had to stop. If I really twisted my ankle, obviously, and I couldn't walk on it, I wouldn't. But when my back was just aching and my body was still moving, I just really didn't pay attention to it. And I continued to run, and I really, I can remember the day vividly. I know, my body was saying, stop, do not do this. And I said, I can do it. It's just pain. I'm just going to push through it. And I really feel like this long journey I've been on with my back, because I've tried literally everything, acupuncture and chiropractors and physical therapy and stretching and yoga and psychics and, people clearing reptile implants out of me. And, I
was there.
Meditation and even more healthier diet than I was currently on. And, just trying all these things. And I'm still, on this road to recovery after over a year and a half. And I've come to what, Nicole and I were talking about this morning. I've recently, come to the conclusion that it's been my fail-safe. It's been my way of right now shutting me down and making me stop and say, listen, you need to start listening to your body. You can't just go and forget about you and just want to go, I got to take care of everything for everybody else or make things happen. There's a body here and you're in it and you need to pay attention. So it's really allowed me to hone in, especially with Pilates, because Pilates really focuses on some of the smallest muscle movements, and you really have to pay attention to, shutting one muscle down and using another, and it takes a lot of mental focus. And so, yeah, I've definitely, I can't see myself ever going back to the way I was before, where I just, think I'm invincible and I'm gonna plow through stuff and even pain, because pain to me now means stop.
Yeah.
When you're, in physical therapy, they tell you if you feel pain, that means don't do, even if it's an exercise I told you to do. If it hurts, stop, don't do it. And I never thought that way before.
Yeah. Even just a couple days ago, I was doing a workout with a client online, and I was using kettlebells, and I was doing these kettlebell swings, and On the first round, I felt like my lower back all of a sudden start to just slightly twinge. And I'm like, oh, what's that? And then the second round, I started to do it again. And I'm like, I felt it. I'm like, it's just feeling like if I push it a little bit more, it's going to go out. And the old me would have been like, just work through it. It'll be fine. You'll get through it. And I just said, no, I'm not doing this because I'm not going to, if my body's telling me no, I'm not going to do it. And, for me, it's interesting because we talk about our soul choices before we come into this lifetime. If you believe in reincarnation and that you get to choose what your soul lessons are and how that may play out in this lifetime and how that's all going to be orchestrated. And I truly believe that I chose to incarnate into a very inflexible body. And that now is so clear to me as to why I chose that lesson, because through my inflexibility, when I finally started to face it, it forced me to make that connection to my body through yoga. And I was, of course, like so scared of yoga because I was afraid of showing like an incapability. But once I moved through that and was able to finally start making that connection, that's when my spirituality started to make leaps and bounds, because I not only was just listening to my mind, I was now letting my body join the conversation. And through allowing the body to join the conversation, it really started to teach me many things that I don't think my mind would have been able to teach me. And like for me, the biggest one was teaching me how to love myself and start to take care of myself through not having to push my body the way you were just discussing, Lisa. And my fail-safe is yoga. I now know because I threw my back out in 2010, and when I 5 weeks after like being crippled and trying to run again, I threw it right out again. And I hadn't been doing yoga for a couple of weeks when I knew I should have been. And I realized that my body will go out if I don't do yoga. But the reason why I'm supposed to do yoga is not necessarily to protect my back. It's to maintain that mind-body connection so that I'm never tuning out from what my body and mind are trying to tell me together. And that's how, when we start to pay attention to our health and our bodies on a deeper level, like that's where we can start to take things to a deeper level and allow our body to start talking to us about like what might be wrong before a doctor starts telling us. Like maybe you'll find out 6 months earlier than you would have that something was up and you want to go see your doctor about it. And now you get to treat whatever it is a lot earlier, and you're not having to face a steeper uphill battle than you would have been had you not listened to yourself. Like these are all important things that I think we start to learn, that we have more tools at our disposal within our own being to be that voice of not concern, but hey, something's up.
Yeah, you do have to listen to it though.
And I think, you said something important, which I know is a factor for me, is it's also about loving yourself. It's like, for me, for so many years, I put myself last. It was everybody else was more important. Just getting the job done was more important. Taking care of my family was more important than anything that I was going through or feeling. And I, translated that over to how I was treating my body. I mean, even though I've always been really healthy as far as how I eat and I'm exercising. But when it came to pain and being uncomfortable, I was just like, you can handle this. But that's not really loving yourself. Handling something isn't loving yourself. And I think that's what I'm learning. It's not about, can I deal with the pain or pushing through it? It's about truly loving and taking care of yourself and listening to what your wants and your needs are.
Yeah, I think that's a really good thing.
Listening to you two talk right now just made me think of one thing. I think the four of us have never really faced the major medical issues. I would venture a guess, but it just makes me think how lucky we are, first of all, but how different this conversation would be for one or all of us if there are so many people that just have lifelong terrible issues. And sometimes solutions for them are not as easy as it's just for us to say, oh, I was lucky and I got to do this. And yeah, I got to choose my doctor, but I've never really had any problem in my entire life that I really needed a doctor for.
Yeah, but you can also throw in the argument of, is it because you've been so proactive in your health from the beginning?
Well, I think health is also there's so many things involved with your health, that come from
society and family and neighborhood.
Yeah, that what you're eating, what you're ingesting, the chemicals that you're around, things like that. Your
socioeconomic status.
How you were born. Just some people are born with genetic types of disorders and things like that. But also there's I know a lot of people who have like cancer or breast cancer, and I find that almost everyone I know who has had breast cancer has some sort of long-term issue, like a family issue, like an alcoholic husband or an abuse situation, or like something that weighs on them heavily on a day-to-day basis that they really have kind of swept under the carpet and really aren't dealing with. Mm-hmm. And, and I may be wrong, and maybe it's only a small percentage of people, but I think that also has something to do with it, that sometimes when we're not dealing with things in our life, we have a way of bringing it full circle.
Well, no, absolutely. Because
something will wake us up.
You're talking about now the emotional bodies and the mental bodies.
Yes.
We've been talking just primarily about the physical bodies, but we forget that we are spiritual beings. We're made up of energy, and our emotional bodies and our mental bodies actually precede the physical bodies. And so that is the last manifestation, is through physical. So when we're not dealing with things emotionally, then they start to manifest in the mental body. Whether that's anxiety, whether that's anger, whether maybe it's just stress. You're not able to handle things, your workloads, or, people start just rubbing you the wrong way a lot easier. And then you don't deal with that. Then all of a sudden the physical manifestation happens. And so.
Yeah, but I've never emotionally dealt with anything. I've cluelessly bounced from episode of life to episode in life. And I don't think I've ever had any physical manifestation. Yes, I've had a bad back for a long time, but that was from hitting a tree in a car.
Maybe it's not. Maybe it's from emotionally suppressing things that you're just not aware of. I mean, I have always believed since the moment my back started to hurt, and one of the reasons I didn't really take it that seriously, I believed that it was just something emotional. Like I had just gotten a divorce after such a long time. My kids both moved out of state, and I just kept believing that it's something that I need to, let go, and I'll work this through, and, it's not that serious. And, it's a journey.
Yeah.
But it's a journey, and you don't always know exactly what it is. But I think it's important to at least look at the other possibilities. Like maybe this just isn't a physical thing. Maybe this is also an emotional thing.
Listen, there are things that are physically just going to make you sick. Okay, you could be emotionally happy, mentally happy, like everything's all good. But if you're just ingesting McDonald's every day, then physically things are going to start to break down. Okay, but also there's the aspect of, what if there are things like there's trauma that happened at a really young age that you've never been able to deal with, or perhaps you don't even remember it because you've suppressed it. That starts to come up in other sorts of ways. And that's why you have the Eastern philosophy that teaches you how certain organs will start to break down because of certain emotions or certain things that have happened in your life. And that's how they're able to find out on a deeper level what's going on with you and heal you through not just the physical body, but the emotional and mental bodies as well.
I do have to say one thing about Eastern medicine, since I'm the one of the four of us that lived in the East. Not the East Coast, the Far East. Their idea of medicine is so fucking backwards sometimes. Yes, they invented
in a communist country in
acupuncture,
China.
but they believe hot water cures sicknesses. So I want to make sure that you take this all with a grain of salt, and it really comes down. When I lived over there, and if you had a very, serious health issue, they would say hot water. Or I even had a staff member that asked me if I
There's a
worked
lot to
out.
be said about shocking your cells with heat that produce some really very healing enzymes. So I wouldn't say
I
it's
think
too
you're,
far
yeah,
off.
I
This
think
is
you're taking
not
it
about
to,
shocking your system with heat. This is about drinking hot water. Like that's all they drank is hot water. But I had a staff member ask me one day. She said, "Do you work out, every day?" And I was like, "Yeah, I work out however many times a week." And she said, "You should just drink hot water. Drinking hot water is like working out." So
okay, but
some of what
you
they
can't,
believe
you can't
is
base that couple conversations like that on the whole Eastern philosophy of China.
I know I did not say the entire Eastern philosophy, but I did say with a grain of salt that there are some things that they are just so backwards on. And I like even just some of the things that we know from what we've learned in Western medicine, that they are thousands of years behind on. It's like they invented some things thousands of years ago and then never progressed any
And
further.
this is why it's so great to have multiple options so that you can take
Yeah.
the best from all the different options available to you and find out what works for you. And I think, like, also, I mean, you can look at yoga. I look at yoga and it makes me laugh sometimes at how, the westernized yoga philosophy has completely moved away from what yoga actually is.
Well, tell more.
Like, for instance, well, I mean, what's being presented to us through the yoga industry is so much more based in ego than it is in the actual practice of what it is. When you learn yoga, you learn that the asana, which is the pose, is 10% of yoga. But when you look at the industry, all you ever see are people in poses and doing this pose and that pose. But there's so much more to the practice that you get benefits from, and that actually is where you make the big spurts of growth and leaps. That it's
I was thinking about that while you were describing your connection with yoga, and I almost said this at the time, but it's so interesting that it's kind of come back to, and it's given me this opportunity to mention it. When I've practiced yoga, it had nothing to do with any sort of spirituality. It was strictly about
The
this
poses.
body benefit, and it really helped me. It completely changed my life. There was never one iota of
But you did yoga
spirituality.
mainly in China?
I did yoga mainly in China, but there was never one bit of inward reflection for me. So that's so fascinating to hear you say that.
Yeah, and you know what? And there's people who just want to do yoga for the physical aspect, and that's totally fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. But when there's so much more to it that you could have available to you, the benefits go way beyond the physical, way beyond the physical. Like, for me, yoga just completely opened my mind. Like, through the expansion of my body, I was able to expand my mind. And that just started helping me to explore how I was living my life and how I was living small and contracted in everything that I was doing. Through my yoga practice, that's what I was able to discover. That, I was limiting all of my movements in life because I believed I had a completely inflexible body, and so my body just couldn't do stuff, and so I just wouldn't even try other things. I wouldn't allow myself to have certain experiences, and that translated through my mental mind. Like, how I lived my life was very inflexible, was very small, and so through my yoga practice, I was able to start really taking a deeper dive into who I am, who I want to be in this world, how I want to live my life, what I want my life to be. And to me, that goes way beyond the physical benefits, because I've been able to now shape my life in a way that brings me so much joy. And that is something that is highly valuable beyond stretching, so.
Absolutely.
I haven't tried yoga out. I keep hearing about it. I keep hearing about, especially like hot yoga and how great it is. Like, not even talking about the spirituality, but just like what Brian said. And I'm kind of willing to do it. It's just,
Okay, let me tell you my yoga story because it's kind of surprising. Because when I say I practice yoga, you're gonna think, oh, I did this for years in yoga. My ex-wife, she did yoga every day and always yoga this, yoga that, and I never tried it. But I've had a bad back for a long time. Very similar to what Lisa has gone through. I've experienced it every morning for the better part of a decade. I would wake up kind of hobbled over. I couldn't straighten up all the way, and I kind of, walked sideways and clunking sounds, and I'd take a hot shower, and then I'd straighten up and go about my day. And a friend of mine was just really getting into yoga, and she just kept saying, try yoga, come to the studio with me. And it was during a really slow period, and she was going like every day of the week, 3 classes a day kind of stuff. So I went for 2 solid weeks, 4 days a week, but like 2 or 3 classes a day, and was just like kicking my body's ass with, doing this really intensive yoga. I didn't start out just like dabbling in it. I went like into these difficult classes, standing on your head and all this kind of stuff. And after about 2 or 3 weeks of doing that, I woke up. When I woke up in the morning, nothing. Like I got up straight as an arrow, didn't even hurt. Went about my day, and then I stopped doing yoga because.
And now you hobble in the morning again.
I do not hobble in the morning. That is a lie. I literally only did it hardcore for 2 or 3 weeks, and that was, I'm gonna say 3 or 4 years ago, and it fixed my back. That very short, intensive period. It wasn't a daily or weekly practice that I owe it to. I do owe it to yoga. I'm convinced of that, but it was a very short period of time, but very intensive.
Yeah, I just don't have anything really that ails me to get me into the yoga studio quite yet, knock on wood.
No, I think, first of all, yoga's not for everyone. I think whatever resonates with you or wherever you feel like a pull towards. I will say, though, from my experience, I detested yoga. The thought of yoga, like I just couldn't. Every time someone recommended it to me, I wanted to roll my eyes and I couldn't think of anything worse. But that was because I had my own insecurities about my body. I don't know if that's a reason for you. I don't think it is. So, but I will say this, Michael, that just teaching yourself how to make the mind and body connection through the breath, because I know you enjoyed the breath work, that might be of something beneficial to you.
I agree. I'm going to give it I'll try to give it a try.
Brian's going to give it another try.
Well, what's interesting, Michael, is you said you don't have anything that ails you, but we're talking about it's more than the body. Maybe you'll get more spiritual benefit out of it.
And I could understand that too, but that's what meditation was for too, and I never really got too much joy out of trying to meditate myself this past year.
Well, think about all the women in the tight yoga pants then.
I live in an area where the average age is 60 years old, so I'm not expecting
He would not want
a
to
great
see.
show there.
That's not a great show.
But going back on something that we talked about earlier, I know I personally this past year have dove deep into my internal health and really cleaning up the food that I consume, and it personally has changed my internal system my internal mood to be generally very happy, or maybe not very happy is the key word, but very positive.
More
and
balanced.
I really feel like, and I've helped some of my friends that are struggling with depression and other things. Like, hey, why don't you try this? Change your diet. Avoid these things. And the main thing that I find as a culprit is sugar-based foods. They sneak sugar in anything and everything nowadays. And it's like, avoid these things and just see what happens after a few weeks, even a couple of months. And it's just it's amazing to see them change too into a completely different, great personality that they used to be. So this has a lot more to do. Again, the food tablet system that we have out there, and like the quick, easy food and fast food and all that stuff, it's not just about body fat. It's not just about the way you look. It is completely connected to the way you feel about life and yourself. So if we're going to go back to, like, positive vibrations and versus negative vibrations, or increasing that, I really think it's a key part of increasing your potential spirituality, if you want to look at it that way.
Well, food holds vibration, so everything that you ingest is going to have an impact on your own vibration. So
right, but the way I looked at your guys' thoughts on vibration, I just translate that in my mind as positive, like you're feeling positive. If, raise my vibes is also saying increase my positivity, increase my, I don't know, lack of better words, just becoming more happier with yourself. And so if you can sit there and say, yeah, these foods have a certain vibrational rate that will raise your vibration rate. I just think being healthy on the inside raises your vibrational rate, or helps you become super positive.
No, it does, but there are specific foods that will even take it a step further. So what if you're someone who's already feeling healthy on the inside, but you kind of want to go to the next level? Well, there's other ways that you can change your diet to do that, and that was actually a choice I personally made. That's why I went vegetarian. Well, no, it's one of the reasons. There were two reasons. The first one was that I wanted to align myself with the law of one, and that all life matters. But the other one was that I knew that it would likely increase my frequency and allow me to have deeper connections with my meditations, which it did. I had a huge, jump in my meditation experience from doing that. And I had actually
lost weight.
Yeah, but that was just like a side bonus. But to be honest, I had people who, we have a lot of friends who are very tuned into energy and who are either Reiki masters or psychics or able to even see your energy, your aura, and all of that. And one of the things that was said to me a lot after I went vegetarian was how high my frequency was around them. Like one of my friends, like our friend Michael, who was on our show, back in, I think it was November, December. When I visited him, he couldn't even stand there. He's like, my head feels like it's going to explode near you. Like I feel like I'm about to go into trance. And he was like, what are you doing? And I'm just like, I'm vegetarian now. And I just, my meditation practice is increased, and, your energy field becomes a lot stronger. And so there is something to it, there are certain things that you can do, and that's just one option. There are so many other things that you can do. And so whatever works for you and falls in alignment with what resonates with you are your options to choose from. But that's something that I think is something people can consider if they're really interested in raising their vibration and deepening the connection that they have to the spiritual realms.
All tied together.
Yeah.
Health, wellness, spirituality.
I think I come closest to God when I'm eating a piece of bacon. I just have to.
Agreed.
This is my thought.
You skeptic.
From a pig that I'm sure died of natural, peaceful causes, of course.
Yeah, it's called a bolt gun.
Crickets on the Nicole side on this one.
No, I'm laughing silently.
And look how they push bacon. You see things about bacon everywhere.
They don't even need a.
Why wouldn't you? Bacon.
Bacon.
And this,
even dogs love bacon.
You're hearing this from the woman that every time I eat bacon, she says, "I'm going to need some of that bacon."
I just take one little bite. Smells good.
All right, everyone. Thanks for joining the conversation today. We love to hear from you, so please send in any ideas or topics that you would like us to discuss to our email info@enlightenup.us. And if you need any more information about us, you can head on over to our website, enlightenup.us. And we will be back next time for another show. Great chatting with you all.
Yeah.
You as
Thanks,
well.
guys. Love you.